So if you're in like in the agency space, if you're a freelancer and you're feeling stuck, you're working 60, 80 hours a week, you're dealing with clients who are pissing you off, you're dealing with people that are sending you like super dickish emails at 4 a.m. because they think that they like own you and your time and attention. The way to get around that is to systematize your workflow and to like really, really, really ruthlessly create those processes that make it so that the decision making is out of the question, so that you don't have to make decisions. The system is already in place for you.
All right, bro, let's kick off. I want to start right with one of your quotes. I think it came from a newsletter or one of your posts, which says, "My sobriety is a catalyst of my entrepreneurship, and my entrepreneurship is a tool I use to stay sober." Now, that is an awesome line.
Did I say that?
I think it was from your. I think it was like one of your year roundup. Could have been this year or another blog post.
Yeah,
but
I remember it.
Seems pretty powerful, Mike. Can you explain a bit more detail for people?
Happy to, and I think that's like a really great place to start off. I got sober in 2010, and I didn't know I had such a predicate for being an entrepreneur, but looking back on it, it's really clear I was always cutting lawns, and I had like a landscaping business even when I was a kid. And then I was a contractor. I was building houses for basically most of my like childhood and being a young man into my late teens and when I turned 20. And so as soon as I learned the skill, I immediately started doing side jobs, and I bought a van, and then, created a contracting company. And it was always in me to do my own thing. I was really terrible at school. I was just it just wasn't for me. Being a part of the system wasn't for me. I really, really struggled with it. And I mean that, like, I just always felt like I was doing something wrong. Like I wasn't going in the right direction. Like there was something else out there. And when I got sober, like you said, I stumbled across an issue of Success Magazine. I actually had a mentor who bought me a subscription to Success Magazine. And it's so funny. I always laugh when I tell this story because I have to say the same thing, where it was only 13 years ago, but at the time, Success Magazine used to come with CDs in them. And now it's like, I don't even have a CD player in my house, but they had CDs of interviews. It's basically like podcasts before there were podcasts. And there was this issue with Seth Godin. And at the end of the interview, there was the typical, like, what would you recommend for somebody just starting out? And Seth Godin said, start a blog, don't tell anybody about it, and write in it every day. And those words really changed my life. I was, like 6 months sober. I was losing my mind. I had to move to South Florida basically because nobody in Philly like wanted me there anymore. And I had a ton of legal trouble hanging over my head. And so I was kind of like running away from it, to be honest. And I was in this new place. I had no direction. It was hot. There were palm trees. I was so out of my element. And I heard this piece of advice, and I just said, you know what? Like, I can do that. And so that's what I started doing. I created a Blogspot account, which at the time was like a thing. And I just started writing every day. I started writing about the most random stuff. Most of it had to do with my journey of like getting sober and just how I was feeling and just random thoughts. But, I would write about other stuff. I remember writing a blog post about like how to make the perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Just completely random, completely not a whole lot of direction to it. But then eventually I discovered that people were coming to my website. And remember, I didn't tell anybody about it. That was the whole deal. Like the point was the process. The point wasn't to grow. And so people started coming to my site, and I thought, how is this happening? And that's when I discovered search engine optimization. That's when I discovered SEO, and people were coming to my site because they were going to Google and they were searching for
Peanut
getting
butter and jelly
sober, or
sandwiches.
like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, correct. And so I realized that if you share your thoughts online, then people flock to you because there's people that are interested in the same thing that you're interested in. And so in a weird way, getting sober launch padded me on this whole world of online marketing, because that Blogspot turned into this website called Sober Nation, which
Mhm.
has been a huge part of my life. It's still like a really, really big website. It's still like a great company, and we help a ton of people, and it's really successful. So it's really just one of the best things I've done with my life. But it's so strange because for most of my career, there was like two sides of me. There was the sober Tim, which I would share some of those thoughts online, and then there was the entrepreneurial Tim, and I felt uncomfortable kind of crossing the two. And eventually, I think you get a little older and you just stop caring quite as much about what other people think about you. And so I was like, well, fuck it. Like, this is who I am. This is this is my journey. This is the person that I have become. And I just sort of dove in about the two, and just mixing the two. And that shows itself through the lessons that I've learned in recovery and in my sobriety, because those lessons aren't just about not drinking or not doing drugs. They're about life and how to manage your life and how to manage your emotions and how to, like, just stick with the process, and how to not think about things as they're being like a finish line. There's no tests to
Mhm.
pass, there's no A grade, there's just continuously waking up every day and doing the next right thing in front of you. And so and so yeah, that it is a catalyst. It turned into, like, the the framework in which I live my life, and that framework also really, really represents itself well in entrepreneurship.
Man, I think why it worked so well as well in the beginning was the fact that you'd gone through something that was very difficult and coming sober, and you were so probably brutally honest that people could see you as someone who's not full of shit. Because there's a lot of smokes and mirrors online. Genuinely,
Yeah.
and the way you write about stuff is that you were doing it in privacy to a degree, but of course people would see these resources and see a lot of value in them, and of course like that transition for yourself would have been so difficult as it is, even moving in that concept. So do you think like the aspect of your recovery and even how was that kind of process? Because of course when you start sharing it online, you open yourself up to all different types of criticism at time as well.
Yeah, it was definitely if you there's nothing in my life that'll ever be harder than that. And
Hmm.
so there's plenty of times, even 13 years later, where I'm going through a challenge and I say, this is not even close to as hard as, like, withdrawing. It's just not even nearly as hard. And so it really puts things into perspective in that way. But but a little bit more onto your point, I really discovered a lot of myself by just ruthlessly, like, opening myself up and putting myself out there. Because what I learned, and I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, which again, this is one of those clear examples of how it's like a catalyst for being an entrepreneur, and how being an entrepreneur is like framed in my recovery. Because what I learned is that people generally are really uncomfortable to totally share themselves online. Everybody talks about imposter syndrome, right? But no one actually has a clue what they're doing. Everyone's just sort of figuring it out along the way.
Mhm.
And so that uh, mechanism, maybe, of just ruthlessly tearing myself open and sharing myself online is a much better way to build a community and to build an audience around your ideas than being like an advice giver. And
Yeah.
so it's really my methodology on how I grow any business, or how I start to grow any audience, is I have no advice to give. I only have experience to share. And as long as I put things in that framework, I can't go wrong, because I'm not trying to be like smarter than anybody. I'm not trying to pretend like I have the secret to life, or like I know the right way to do things. There's a million ways to do anything. And so I've always been really turned off by, like, internet dorks and entrepreneurship dorks
Gurus.
who just say, like, this is how you have to do it. And I know exactly the right way to do everything. It doesn't appeal to me. And I was always really, really nervous of coming across that way. And so I basically dodged that whole mental game by not being an advice giver, being an experience sharer. Because, like, what is there to argue, right? Like, what is there
Yeah.
this is my experience. There's nothing, there's no debating there. There's no um like there's no advice to give. It's just, this is what I've been through, this is what I'm learning, this is what happened, this is what it was like, this is what happened, and this is what it's like now. And so basically the whole philosophy around company building for me, with building audiences online, has been generated through that kind of methodology.
Mm. And man, that's why your podcast has worked really well, and even your intro to LinkedIn and other platforms have worked really well because you've gone and done the thing, and now you talk about the thing and you help others do the thing. Whereas a lot of people will just two plays. People can give the advice giver, or people share along their way, which is nothing wrong with sharing along your way. But I guess you've done the hard yards as the SEO blog writer and someone who's come back from addiction and worked through the recovery aspect, and now you're just sharing that experience, because that's actually valuable, and that's what's resonating with people, and that's why you're growing really quickly as a result.
uh, I think it definitely resonates with people. I think it comes across as not, as just relatable, right?
Yeah.
And it's not intimidating. It's not, people say often that they feel like they know me, and that's not something that like I intentionally try to do. I think it's just a byproduct of the way I approach creating content and the way I approach building audiences, because like it really is a direct result of stuff that I learned from recovery. So for instance, I've been sober for a little while. And if somebody who's new comes up to me and says, like, hey, Tim, like, I could really use your help. Like, how did you do this? Right. That's usually what they say. How did you do this? The last thing anybody wants is to be told what to do. And that's why traditionally, what therapy is great. I'm not knocking anybody, but that's why a lot of times people say that they just couldn't get it when they talk to a therapist or when they go talk to a professional, because it's all of these like these directions and instructions and all these facts and this knowledge, right? Where what people really really want is to say like, oh yeah, like I feel that way too, like I have felt that way too. And so for me to be able to approach somebody with where they are in their journey, whether it's in recovery or entrepreneurship or anything, the best thing that you can do is just say to them like, yes, I know how you feel, I've been there. And so it's very disarming when you approach it from that kind of viewpoint, um because at that point there's only stuff. This has been my experience, these are the lessons that I've learned, I know how you feel, and it gets better. And when, like what that those few words, like it gets better, I promise, it got better for me, it'll get better for you. It's so powerful, both in terms of helping people, but also in terms of like what I'm trying to do with my companies and the success I'm trying to earn. I just think it's a way better approach.
100%, man. And it's funny you said that people recognize you and feel like they know you already. Because for me, I actually haven't drank in 8 months, and I know that made us seem
Nice.
that much, but similar enough. Well, not necessarily similar story. I just want to take a break from drinking because, as an Irish guy, young 27-year-old,
I'm
um,
Scottish, man.
you,
My whole family's from Edinburgh.
like you know the vibe, as
Yeah.
a man. So I took like 6 months out, and now I'm like 8 months haven't drank. And to be honest, it's not like I want to give up forever, but I haven't put a time limit on at the same time, and I got so much benefit from it. So the early stages of like my entrepreneurship kind of journey as well, I resonate a lot with your content and a few other guys as well that are speaking a similar message. So it's awesome to be able to connect with people on that level. And I feel if you track that back to the beginning of your content, how you started writing your blogs and how that grew into Sober Nation. Like that's amazing then, because you were able to brand it and package it. Like, so can you even explain like how Sober Nation kind of like grew to be even just get off the ground and start helping people, because you went on to build your agency off that then? Like, what did you learn about even like marketing to a particular group of individuals?
Well, Sober Nation is I'll never call it a mistake, but it's so easy to look at it now and make it seem like I had a plan, right? And I think that's one of
Mhm.
the funniest things about Sober Nation is it kind of was this guinea pig in my life that I could learn from and constantly make mistakes on, and then apply those lessons to other things. And I think about sometimes like, man, if I knew now what I knew then, Sober Nation would be like so huge. And I'm not even saying that to brag or make a big deal
Of
about it.
course.
It's just like I just had no idea what I was doing. And so but that's how it works, like you don't know until you know. And that's just part of the journey, and I'm grateful for it. But more the only thing that I really purposefully did on Sober Nation, which I think I can look back on and like take credit for or say like, yeah, that was smart, is I did. And the reason why it grew so much is because I was posting these pictures on Facebook of people on their anniversary date. So if you get like 1 year sober, like you would send me a picture. You said like, hey, I haven't drank in 8 months. I'm feeling great. And people would send me pictures of themselves and their date and like I don't know, a sentence or two. Sometimes people would send me entire stories, whatever it was, and I would post them and I would put them on social media and they would just go super insanely viral. And I've realized then that the best way to grow something is just to make it about other people, because other people love to have their story shared, and they love to be. And it made people feel really, really good to see themselves in that kind of spotlight. And then it was like a snowball effect. Other people would see other people. And so other people would send me the pictures and would send me the stories. And so then I would post them and then they would share it and then all their friends would share it. And then eventually the whole Facebook page just totally blew up. So granted, this was before Facebook was like so hard to get organic reach. There was a time when
Mhm.
the organic reach on Facebook was really, really, really powerful. And it's just not that way anymore. But even still, I still post those stories. Well, I don't personally do them, but they still get posted every day, and they always do well. It's just a really, really effective tool. So the exposure for Sober Nation was clearly just a byproduct of making it about other people and making it a
Mhm.
platform for other people to share their story. And then through that, it kind of bought me time and bought me um, just ability to experiment on the actual like meat and potatoes of the website, to
Mhm.
learn SEO and to learn ways to monetize a media business and all that stuff. And now, yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure if you can say that it's like the biggest recovery online. I don't know. It probably is. But either way, it's really grown into something that I didn't think it would be, right? Like I didn't know exactly what my end goal was here. I just kept kind of showing up and kept doing stuff, and then it just turned into what it is.
Mm. And man, that's the beauty of it, because I guess like it's kind of like it sounds like a podcast, to be honest, if you think about it, because you're uplifting other people and you're giving other people the voice, and then as a result, then their message is getting heard and what they have to say is getting propagated essentially. So now you were able to do that for a very specific audience. And when you start building out your website, then that forms the basis of your agency, I guess, at that point, because now you know that you've learned what works and you can package that order for other people. Is that kind of how you were kind of thinking about it in the early stages?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't even that deliberate, really. It's Sober Nation was getting big enough to where I was just getting some attention. And
Mhm.
the behavioral health market, let's call it, although sometimes, but it is a market, it's still very archaic in that a lot of healthcare is so far behind on using technology and using marketing in the way that we think about it and like sharing
Mhm.
stories. It's still very much the business is still very much run on like relationships and like who you know and who can refer you patients. And that's true in treatment, that's true in dentists, that's true with private practices. Like healthcare is just built on a different foundation than like we think a business that um, is a little bit more typical in our view. And so it was rare at the time that there was an audience around behavioral health, like something that is so dry and clinical and treatment oriented. And so it didn't take long for people to start approaching me, which again was not part of my plan at all. Happened really is I read an article on Moz, and it was by this guy named Mike. Maybe it was Mike Ramsey. I know there's Dave Ramsey, Mike something.
Hmm.
And he wrote this like 30-page article all about why he created an agency that specialized in working with lawyers. And in the article, he had a conversation with like a mentor, and the mentor said there's 30,000 something agencies in the country. Like, why is anybody going to choose you? And he knew when he heard he had to differentiate himself. And the way to differentiate himself was by being local. And so we created a local
Hmm.
marketing agency and worked only with local attorneys and local lawyers. And I read that and I just knew right then and there, I was like, I can make something very, very, very specific in an industry that I understand, in an industry that has value, in an industry that I can actually grow and get clients from and like make a name for myself and make a reputation for myself. As soon as I read that sentence, it was just like, this is what I'm doing. This is instantly happening. And that's how Stodzy was created. I was getting this attention from, some businesses or like behavioral health centers saying like, how are you doing this? How are you building an audience of these people who like need help? Basically, these are our potential clients. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just making stuff. like I'm
Sharing
just making
shit.
stuff. Yeah. But like over the course of the 2 years in the beginning of Sober Nation, like I was learning. I was reading Copy Blogger every day. I was reading Moz every day. I was learning about technical SEO. I was learning about copy. I was learning about how to format sales pages. I was learning how to format like blog articles so they keep your attention.
Hmm.
Since read full articles online, it's a lot of scanning. So I was just learning. I was becoming a professional. And as soon as I read that sentence, I thought, you know what? I can crush it here. I just know I can. Um, and that's what I did. And that's what I've done. And that's what I'm still doing.
Man, that's wild. What year did that kick off in?
That was uh late 2011, I think.
Oh my
Late
god.
2011.
You were early to this, like to the marketing agency kind of side of things. Like at that point, there's very little. Well, you said it was
Yeah.
30,000, but it's not as wide span as it is now. But it's sick to see how like you kind of tie that to like a specific niche that you knew really, really well, and that's your differentiator. Um, and at that point, like you've been sober for maybe like a year or 2 years, so you're getting like constant momentum, and you're rolling with that momentum, which is really like the benefit of how these things. You get a good positive win, a positive feedback. How did you package it for clients? Were you working with doing outbound? Like how did that come about?
A little bit of both. Mostly I was writing on the website. I don't do it as much anymore, and it's actually a
Hmm.
huge priority. If I don't know if there's a full screen for people watching the video. This board Monday, I write
Hmm.
down. Oh yeah, nice. There you go. Every Monday I write down like my goals and the things I'm trying to achieve for the week. And for Stadzu, the name of my agency, you can see it on that one. Um, I have made the habit of writing long form content on the Stodzy site once again, because in the beginning, that's just how I generated all of my deals. I would basically do the same thing I was doing for Sober Nation. And remember, I'm like a copy blogger protege. So it's like
Yeah.
it came full circle for me. But all the stuff that I learned on copy blogger, I was just doing for myself.
What I want to get into mainly around your agency is around how you scaled it and how you built it. Because of course you start off with some good clients and you gave them good results. Were a lot of your clients like reoccurring clients? Like how did that kind of come about so throughout the years?
For sure. I'm just a huge believer in monthly recurring revenue. And so I have web design and web development services, but even that mostly I've angled my agency in. I'm not a web development company. I'm an SEO company that builds websites that are SEO'd well.
Okay.
And so we like building our own websites simply because it makes it easier for us to do our job, which is to generate traffic to the site. But no, I sell usually year-long contracts, and many times people sign up with us for 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, I've got clients that have been with us forever, and And the monthly recurring revenue has been very, very beneficial for me to scale. Scale is
Mm.
tough in the agency space, but I actually argue that I'm like a believer in the agency space. One of the things that I talk about sometimes online is that I believe, and you're a great example of this, I believe that the best place for anybody to get started is with service, is by building a service business. There's no cost of entry. You don't need to have any funding to get it started. You don't have any
Mm-hmm.
technical debt. You don't need to spend 100 grand building a product. You just get a client and then you get to work. And then you get another client and you get to work. You're not in debt. You're instantly profitable. And so, people knock it a bit because you're not going to sell an agency for like Uber, which is like 1,000 times revenue. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like the cool thing, is to have a big cash out. But I just don't believe that the odds are in your favor when you're doing that. I'm a big believer in just doing what is logically the next right step and statistically what is going to bring you success. And so, with that understanding, the monthly recurring revenue has been very, very important. And I don't really take deals in anything that don't have monthly recurring revenue. And scaling is all about systems and processes. This is actually the first course I ever built, and I don't do a whole lot of courses. It kind of takes me away from my focus. But when I created Agency Clarity, the whole idea behind the course was this is how you take a service business and this is how you remove yourself over and over and over again so that people, which are always the bottleneck in a service business, which is the time and the people, aren't the thing that are keeping you from bringing in more business, aren't the thing that are keeping you from scaling. And so, I read a lot. Basically, everything I know in life, I read from a book. And there's a book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It's like a pretty famous business book. It's almost like a trendy business book at this point. But man, that book completely flipped the script on how I thought running a business should be done. And from that book, I ruthlessly created processes and ruthlessly created systems and made it very defined with departments and what responsibilities are and how work, I call it workflow, how workflow transitions all the way from like becoming a lead to the website to a sales process to a signed deal to onboarding to the first month to the second month, and like how that workflow, how your process flows methodically through the different departments of your agency. Unless you can figure that out, you're always going to be just working for time, which, by
Mm.
the way, I'm not against. There's plenty of people who just love freelancing and love working with clients and they make good money and they're totally happy. I'm just a little bit more ambitious in terms of where I want my companies to grow. And so that has been a huge turning point for me, or like one of the top 3 most important books I've ever read in my life in terms of the impact that it had. So if you're in like in the agency space, if you're a freelancer and you're feeling stuck, you're working 60, 80 hours a week, you're dealing with clients who are pissing you off, you're dealing with people that are sending you like super dickish emails at 4 a.m. because they think that they like own you and your time and attention. The way to get around that is to systematize your workflow and to like really, really, really ruthlessly create those processes that make it so that the decision making is out of the question, so that you don't have to
Mm.
make decisions. The system is already in place for you.
Man, I love that. It's so fucking interesting. Just firstly on a kind of startup VC side, it's like I came from like that part of the world, and a lot of it is like fugazi, man. Like it's a lot of it is just like
Oh yeah.
pie in the sky. Like and like I'm living in Singapore. I've been in London. I've been at these like talks where people talk about how much cash they've raised and everyone claps, and like then the companies aren't profitable. Like and I could tell you some crazy examples of that over the years, which is why I kind of got a little bit disenfranchised by that because I felt like it was all smokes and mirrors, and I felt like it wasn't substantial. And like, there's nothing wrong with it at the end of the day, but I just feel like that it rewards the wrong behavior sometimes. Because at the end of the day, like you're trying to build a strong business, and then just on the point of like the systems, man. Like that is like the nuts and bolts of it in the back end, I guess. And now we've gotten to the point whereby a lot of it can be automated. So is your business now, I know you said you're removed from your business a lot of the time now. Is it more automated? So like you've Zapier shit running everywhere, or is it mainly that you've good people in place that can capture this information?
It's mostly good people. I love Zapier. Don't get me wrong. Like some people say that social media, if social media disappeared, what would happen to the world? You know, if Zapier disappeared, my life completely falls apart, like instantly within a minute. And so I'm all about automating. However, I make the argument, you know, automation and leverage. Everyone reads Naval's Twitter thread and listens to that How to Get Rich podcast. And that I really loved stuff from that podcast, especially the concept of leverage. But in that podcast, he argues that labor is like the least valuable form of leverage. And I completely disagree, because even if you're a Joe Rogan, right, or an Oprah or a Donald Trump, and you have all of this huge brand leverage, you can't do it by yourself. Even if you try to, all of that leverage actually collapses on itself because there's no way that you can keep up with it. So I think the most important part of any business is the people. You can have a great business with people that'll smoke like a great business with automation, simply because there's competence. We need to pay more attention to the fact that people actually have brains and they think and they solve problems. And so it is Stodzy within itself. Remember, Stodzy is like a very, very service-based business. And so Stodzy is really built on people and on letting people do the work and letting people make decisions. Like, of course, I automate things like when a lead comes in from the website, it can ping me through email and it can send them an email for a survey, right? Like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff is really all done. But surprisingly, when it comes to Stasi, there's not that much digital automation in the form of like replacing people. In fact, it's the opposite. We just hired 3 more people, and I want people in there. I want people to do a job that makes clients feel like they're heard and listened to, and like their specific needs are being at least like attempted to be met. You know, like you do your best to do everything, but at the very least you can do is just listen and do the damn thing in the best way that you can. And so systems and processes, at least in the agency space, isn't automation in the sense that we think of like robots running an Amazon factory. It's
Yeah.
automation in the sense that when this happens, do this. When this happens, do this. So the whole team is automated in the sense that the decision making is removed as much as it can be. You can't be too automated. I always like to think of that Bruce Lee quote, right? Where it's like, you must be like water, because if you're too mechanical, you become this mechanical man. But if you're like too creative, then there's nothing to you. There's no substance to you. There's nothing to hold you up. And so you got to be able to flow, and you got to be able to crash, and you can fill a cup, and you can become the cup, and you can become the teapot, right? And so like I always approach it from that viewpoint, where you automate the process, but I don't necessarily think in a service agency business you want to automate the work. I think it's a bad
Yeah.
recipe for doing great work.
Definitely, man. And I think it's interesting because you know so much about your business. Do you think that helped you in terms of defining standing operating processes, like the back end, how things should operate? Like, were you defining these processes? Therefore, when you hired 3 new employees, you put them in here, put them in here, put them in here, and let the place let it try run, not necessarily on autopilot, but let the guys get down to the work.
Yes, but it's also, I think I'm lucky in the sense that I'm not a micromanager. I just never have been. And I honestly think it's rooted out of like selfishness, just because I know what I want to do. And any second I spend doing stuff that I don't want to do, I just hate, like, I don't know. I'm a selfish person. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so
Yeah.
anytime something in my business pops up where it's just like, fuck, I gotta solve this problem, it's like a panic mode for me. I, as quickly as possible, start getting to work on how I can not do these things. But that's also a very pragmatic stance, because the most important thing that I can do for my company ever and always is to grow it. And that's one of the things that I learned from the E-Myth. Like, the point is to stop baking the cakes. The point is to grow the bakery. And so if I'm baking a cake, I'm doing something wrong. My point is to grow the business. I want to work on the business and not in the business. And so it's not like I knew this stuff right away. You know, I've been at this for a little bit, and it
Mhm.
takes failures, and it takes hiring the wrong person. And then, I mean, you know, I remember in the beginning, if I had to fire somebody, I would delay it for like a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and it would just terrify me. Right. And then you just get better at having these conversations and about avoiding it in the first place. Whereas the my thinking with that isn't as like analytical as it seems. It's very much along the lines like, me personally, if I'm spending time doing something that isn't growing the business, then there's a problem and I need to hire somebody right away, even if it doesn't always make financial sense, because like you're buying your time back. Whereas
Yep.
my time is best spent closing deals, growing my company, doing stuff like this, you know, getting my name out there. And that's really like that's the viewpoint of which I base those kind of decisions on.
Proper like kind of entrepreneur style, like knowing when to hire people, knowing when to take a step out to work on the business, not in the business. Of course, it takes 13 years, and I'm nowhere near that stage, I guess. Or a lot of people listening to this, young guys as well, will fall into those different traps. So a kind of good question off this is like, talking numbers as much as you can. Like when you were scaling up, when did you hire more employees? Was it from 5,000 a month to 10,000 a month? How did you how did you know what numbers to be working with to get such a scale of what you have now?
I don't think it was based on numbers. I think it was based on like expertise. One of the lessons that you learn about hiring is, well, there's two. Culture fit is really, really important. And, you know, I think the word culture is kind of a buzzword now, where people think
Yeah,
that like culture
just what to
makes a
say.
company. Yeah. And it doesn't, but it does, because it's not that the culture itself is so important. It's that when somebody comes in that isn't in line with the company culture, like it can tear your company apart. And it's so surprising. One person, if you have one person that just kind of makes people go like, you know, it'll, it's brutal. And I've had it happen twice. And both times it was like, man, I cannot ever let this happen again. And so, and so what I'm saying is, like, it wasn't a numbers decision as much as it was an expertise decision, where sometimes we're getting to the point where it's like, oh, like, I don't know how to do this. Or for right or for wrong, if I don't know how to do something, I will still take the business and figure it out. I'm it's like a joke in my company sometimes. Like when I hire new people, I'm not very good at training, and so everyone says like, Tim's throwing them to the wolves again, and it's like, yeah, I do. Like, have you ever heard of Google? You can figure out anything in your life. You just figure it out. You know,
Yeah.
it's part of one of the parts of our company culture. I'm kind of blanking on the word. You know, like the manifesto. Maybe that's still not the right word, but on our website we have like the 10 things that we believe in, and we spent a long time on it. You know, and one of them is use your brain, because you can figure out anything. You just have to use your brain. And so anytime I'm in the scenario where it's like, I don't know how to do this, is it worth me figuring it out? The answer is always no. And so maybe I should be more methodical in terms of the finances and trying to make decisions based on money. You know, my partner, my best friend, he really handles all the money. I don't even know when the invoices go out, frankly. But he'll check me if I'm making a decision that is financially like irresponsible. But even with that said, he and I are pretty in line with the understanding that the finances really, really don't matter that much. What matters is that you're solving the next problem in your company. so that you're never stuck in this position where like you're costing a client money, because that's just the absolute worst thing that can happen. So I know that wasn't like a specific answer, but I've just never really made decisions based on finances like that.
That's an interesting way to look at it, man, because most people would try maximize that aspect and then forget about everything else. But I guess you kind of are doing it in a way, because you're looking at how do we fill expertise and deliver the highest value for clients as possible, make sure they're happy, satisfied, reoccurring. And that's kind of awesome in that aspect, you know. One thing I forgot to ask about the clients, which was really interesting, is you said you look at year retainers or year contracts. How do you sell year contracts compared to quarterly or monthly?
Um, well, I sell the expectation. If they want something for 3 months, then they should go find a company that sells 3-month contracts. But this is this is a good point to be in, and this is like something that I've earned, and I'm grateful that I'm in this position, but it's also really, really powerful, where I can so confidently say that, look, if that's a decision you want to make, great. I'm going to say there's like a 90% chance that 3 months from now, you're going to be calling me because you wasted your money and you went a cheaper, less efficient route. And so, like, you only get in that position when you don't need people's business. And
Mm.
sometimes it's hard to get there. Like I said, I'm kind of selfish, and if there's people giving me real kickback or they're trying to like knock me down on price, my first thought is always like, I don't need to talk to you. Like, no, it's just not happening. And it's not that I don't like you. I don't need you. And so it's good to have that leverage when you're negotiating for contracts. But also, I want to make sure that people listening to this know it didn't happen that way overnight. In the beginning, I took $2,000 a month deals and I said, you can cancel at any time. And I'm just so grateful that you're willing to give me a chance, and I'm going to do my absolute best. And that's where it started. And then eventually it was like 2,500 a month. And then it's like, hey, maybe we can add Google My Business to our package. And then we put on-site SEO and GMB together, and it turned into 4,000 a month. And then it's 6 grand, 8 grand. We got $20,000 a month clients, and that's not typical. Not every client is $20,000 a month, but the point is, if there is a client that has that kind of budget and doesn't want somebody to screw it up, I'm the person that they call. And that doesn't happen overnight. Like, you really, really have to build your reputation in that standpoint. But once your reputation is there, it makes it a lot easier it makes it easier for two reasons. One, it's a real thing when you're on the phone with somebody and you're just second guessing yourself. Like, sometimes it just happens. It's human nature. You're thinking like, oh God, I'm feeling shaky about this. I feel like this guy's grilling me. I feel like this woman like is seeing through me. And that's not a good feeling. And so being exposed in that way, I can't do it. It keeps me up for days and days and days. And so like I avoid that at all costs. And I think I overcompensate with our deliverables to like avoid that. But also it's a matter of like just getting your reps in. We've done thousands and thousands and thousands of reps. And when you have done the reps, it makes it a lot easier to confidently say like, no, I can't take this deal. If you want good work, this is what it's going to cost. If not, best of luck to you. Like, I don't have any problems with somebody that doesn't want to work with me, but I know in my heart that it's the wrong decision for them.
Where do you think that area of confidence came from? Do you think because, of course, just delivering over the years and building up all those testimonials and all those examples?
Yeah, but it's also practice. Sales is a skill. Sales is a real thing. Knowing how to control a conversation, not in the sense that like, oh, I'm controlling you, but it's when there's a conversation, there's a leader and there's a follower, and so like knowing how to be the leader in the conversation, um, knowing your services inside out is really, really important, because there's nothing worse than that feeling on a sales call where you just kind of get duped and like somebody says something and you don't know. And then again, like that still does happen, but it's easier for me now to say like, you know what? I don't know. I'm not really sure the answers to that. I can find out and get back to you. Whereas, a couple of years ago, if I was ever stuck, I would get so anxious and my heart would start pounding. I'm kind of an anxious person, really. And so I've had to practice sales, practice, practice, practice. I've studied thousands of different sales techniques. I've studied all types of different strategies. I've studied all of the, like rebuttal tactics and things like that. And ultimately I've developed my own process that works for the service that I sell and works for the specific needs that the clients in our industry have. And so practicing sales, I was so lucky. Again, another example of my sobriety being a catalyst. When I first moved to Florida, I was like super uneducated. All I knew how to do was build houses. I was like no resume, more or less like criminal, right? Like the only job I could get was in a phone room selling medical supplies, cold calling like 100 people a day. And I am so lucky that I stumbled into that job because I just learned how to get hung up on over and over and over and over again and not take it personal. It's not like a
Mm.
personal thing. It's just the person that I'm talking to doesn't need what it is that I'm offering them. And so starting on that foundation and being like, you know what, sales is like, it's not just about being like suave or wearing a nice suit or like some Wolf of Wall Street type shit. It's not like that at all. It really is like the alignment of service and solutions. And when you understand that, it makes it a lot easier to seek out the people that need what it is that you're offering, as opposed to just talking to anybody and everybody who will listen to you, which I had to do in the beginning, which I'm grateful again that I had to do. But as it evolves, it really becomes much more of like a skill that I can define and I can articulate in a way
It's
that
also
generates results.
it's also like an art as well in one aspect, because when there's that perfect harmony, your solution fits their problem and it works really well. You can see in the call like there's like a good relationship, good rapport. And when there's a misalignment, it's just like light and day. It just
Yes.
falls apart. You know what I mean? It just completely falls apart. I think you just get that with time. And I guess, like, of course, it took a while for you to define your industry, define your ICP, and refine as time went on. So that's also like, it's kind of, you need to just, of course, just get out there and do it. That's basically it. And that's why you write about it so well, you know. I wanted to dig into some of your work, some of your writing as well, because I think it's pretty awesome, man, to be honest. And I think what I'd like to start with maybe is, how would you go about building your business now again if you had the chance in 2023 and there's all LinkedIn, Twitter, everything open to you? What would you go about to try and make your first 100K?
Same thing I've been doing. Find an industry, write about it as well as you possibly can. The writing serves two purposes. It builds your audience and it teaches you. The best way to learn anything is to write about it. And like once again, people don't appreciate their brains enough. Like there is such a thing as understanding something. ChatGPT isn't going to help you understand something. It'll just create a whole bunch of shit for you to put out there, which has its own benefits in different ways, right? But the people that succeed for the most part are the ones that know what the hell they're talking about, that know what the hell they're doing. And so pick an industry, write one long form article a week and create a newsletter. Even to start, like I recommend just making your article your newsletter. You don't have to be so technical about it. You just learn. You write and you learn, you write and you learn. And then what you do is you email 3 people a day, email one person a day, make one contact a day. Cold outreach works. And people don't like to do it because they're scared of rejection. And so what they do is they post videos on Instagram and they take selfies and then come up with inspirational quotes on LinkedIn because it feels because it feels like a way of growing your brand that
Bullshit, you know.
yeah, and it's not that it is bullshit to a way. I'm not saying that there's no value on it. Like I've grown a really big audience on Twitter and LinkedIn recently, and it's awesome. It's super, super effective. But in terms of getting started, it's just a terrible place to get started because
Mhm.
you're not creating anything. You're just screaming into the void. Basically, you're feeding the beast. And if you write real content that has real meaning to real people that have real problems in an industry, and then you reach out to one person a day in that industry, if you do that for 6 months, do it for 6 months, you'll have 1,000 people on your email list. And more importantly, people in the industry know who it is that you are. They know what it is that you're trying to do. And at this point, you might not have any clients yet. You might not be making any money. And this is where people quit because they think, oh, this isn't working. But like that is working. That process is actually the act of it working. It's messy. It's not cut and not everything fits nicely into its own little compartment in your brain, right? The messiness is the process. So do that, and then just don't stop doing it. Just keep doing it until it works, because it's going to work. It's one of like the only damn near guarantees I've ever found in life. If you write like a long form helpful article once a week and you send it out to people on email, and you reach out to one person a day in the industry, and you spread your newsletter and you spread your email address, like it's just going to work. I don't know how else I can say it.
Man, I love that. And I think the biggest thing for even me and for a lot of people was, moving from that kind of platitude content, like, getting 100 likes for the Hobo CEO, to just genuine, actual content to help people. And I had Dakota Robertson on my podcast, and he was speaking around the authority piece. And in the beginning, you always want to be writing authority content. And myself and a few other people have started doing it as a result. And the return on investment is just amazing, because like you're getting a 10% of the amount of engagement you would, but of that 10%, it's just way more targeted, it's way more aligned, and you're actually helping people. You're not just
Yeah.
talking jargon, or as you say, advice. Just speaking advice. And I'm generally mostly just sharing my experiences. But a question I have on this, and I want to be sold it, is, can you sell me a newsletter? Because the issue for me, right, is that I've always been writing on LinkedIn every single day, and I had a newsletter for my podcast, but it wasn't really that effective just for the podcast itself. But now I'm thinking of doing just a podcast itself newsletter, but I'm just delaying it in my head. Sell me the idea. How important has it been for you?
It's been the most important thing that you could have. So you picked an interesting example, because podcasts and newsletters I almost think as being adjacent. I think newsletters are a little bit more valuable because with a newsletter you quite literally own your audience, whereas with a podcast you're still sort of, in a way, leasing your audience through a third party, right? It's not exactly the same as Facebook, and I get that, because if you have a podcast, one of the great things about podcasts is I think listening to somebody's voice creates this strange invisible relationship with them, where like the few podcasts that I listen to, I feel like I know them. Something happens when you listen to someone's voice, and it's actually really interesting, where there's a lot of people that think like people have been reading and that's the best thing that you can do as a person to grow, but really people have been telling stories for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, and the written word is still like pretty new. And so there's something really really deep in our brainstem and our amygdala that attaches people to vocalized stories. And so I think that if you're not going to do a newsletter, a podcast is the next best thing that you can do. And I think that it's hard to make newsletter based podcasts because you're kind of doing the same thing twice. Like, why bother when you could just share the podcast itself? And so I get that. My argument would be that an email list is the only thing on the internet that you'll ever own. It's mine. It's my email list. Nobody can take it from me. Facebook can change their algorithm. Twitter can do Elon stuff and maybe burn the whole thing down, or maybe explode the whole thing into being like the most valuable social media platform in the world. I have no idea. LinkedIn can continue to be like the cheesiest, most like wholesome platform that there is, right? It doesn't matter. I don't need any of them because I have an email list, and the email list is mine, and the email list is a one-to-one relationship I have with the people that subscribe to me. Whereas with the other ones, like you're going through a third party, you're renting them. And so from that standpoint alone, I'll always bank on an email list because I've just been duped by social media so many times to the point where like you need to expect it. That's the point. It's going to change because they have obligations. So, it's the safest thing for sure, but it's also the most lucrative thing. The CPM. So let's say you want to run ads on your podcast. Great. The CPM on a podcast ad is usually $25, probably 20, 25 at the highest, So for every 1,000 listeners, sometimes even 1,000 downloads, you can make $25. Awesome. If you have a newsletter, the CPM on a newsletter is closer to $40, $45. So for every 1,000 subscribers, you can make $45. And here's the real secret to newsletters. For some reason, we collectively have decided that our email address is the most personal space we have online. And you can tell this because when you get spam email addresses, like how bad does it piss you off? It's infuriating. You're like, what are you doing? Don't email me. I didn't give you my email address. You know that I didn't give you my email address. I don't even respond to them anymore. I don't even report to spam anymore or unsubscribe. I just immediately block them because I think it's so annoying and it's so rude and it's so offensive. But if you get spammed on Twitter, how many Twitter DM spams do you have right now? Hundreds, thousands, And so your email inbox is this really personal, sacred place in your digital life, in your digital avatar that you protect, and you only let people in there who you want to hear from. And that is why email makes so much more money than social media, both from an advertising standpoint, but also from a sales standpoint. Like if you're trying to develop a product, if you're trying to sell your service, if you're trying to grow your podcast agency, you're not going to have a better converting medium than direct email. Direct email, you can sell them directly. You can sell them case studies. You can just send them links to your podcast. You can send them videos on how to set up a podcast studio. And then on every single one of those, you can put a link that says book a call. And the conversion rate that you'll get on your email is, 3x, sometimes 10x more than what happened if you could do it straight through social.
You have me convinced. And the reason why, man, I think I've been burned as well in the past. Like I had so my podcast, how it started was I had kickoff sessions for my podcast and I've been growing it for the last 2.5 years. And I think I just fell into freelance space, consulting space, and agency space from it. So it just kind of happened organically, because people were like, help me out, whatever. But for my own kickoff sessions podcast, I had 2 Instagram accounts deactivated. I don't know how it fucking happened. God knows how it happened. I actually think I do know how it happened. There was a hack on Buzzsprout 2019, and my account got deleted off Instagram shortly after. Hypothesis, but anyway, so that kind of gave me the first instance, and then I know myself like this is the right thing to do, but I need someone like yourself who's an expert in it. And even if it's a couple of hundred people in the beginning, or if even it's 50 people, those people I guess are just so much warmer, so much closer to you. Yeah. Even if your service is B2B, I guess they're still getting this. Because the thing with podcasting, as you know, is like there's a creator version, which is like us, and then there's the business branded version, which are like completely different. So it's kind of about creating that that opportunity for people to learn more at a deeper level when you're doing it already every day. So you're kind of the opposite. You came from the copy blog scenario into social media and started to write shorter form. How was that process, man?
It was weird. I've always appreciated social media because Sober Nation grew from Facebook, but I was always so resentful for social media because like when Facebook killed their reach, it changed my life. Like I remember I would write articles and then I would post them onto Facebook and I would pull up the Google Analytics live and just see people stacking up. And, I didn't realize what I had at the time. And honestly, I think that the 2% ish reach that you get on your Facebook pages is kind of fair. Like I think it makes sense. If I were Facebook, I would probably do the same thing. But I just felt so stupid because if I was putting all of that attention into growing my Facebook page that I would into growing my email list. I would have, I don't know, probably 400,000 email subscribers at this point. And so I just felt dumb. Like it was all of the time that I was spending chasing this dopamine, I could have been spending chasing like sales and chasing money. And so I've just never unforgotten that lesson. But it was you mentioned Dakota. Dakota helped me kind of see the light, and also my friend Dan Go, he convinced me to do it. And really, if it weren't for Hype Fury, I still wouldn't do it, because the even just the act of logging into social media, I don't generally like. I don't. It doesn't make me feel good. I'm like really into fitness, and I'm really into health, and I'll be the first one to say that Instagram makes me feel like, my body is gross and all that. And I'm like fit. I'm not trying to make this like a fitness show, but I'm pretty fit. And it's just the self comparison that it happens. Maybe I'm just more like vulnerable to that, right? And so for those reasons, like I choose not to participate in social media too much. But when I discovered Hype Fury, it was like, okay, I can just make this part of my process. I can wake up early in the morning and I can write like my daily blog. I have this blog that no one really knows about that I just kind of write to clear my head and to clear my thoughts in the morning. And I can go to Hype Fury and I can post 4 or 5 different tweets and LinkedIn posts all at the same time. And then I do it and I don't have to think about it again. So seriously, like if it weren't for Hype Fury, I never would have dove into this, because I'm just so nervous about getting caught in that like dopamine trap of social media and spending my time on there. So like WordPress, ConvertKit, and Hype Fury, those 3 pieces of software are what my entire like enterprise is built around now.
That is incredible, man. And I think what's cool there is the fact that you recognize that you could fall into it just like a form of, maybe like addiction, because a lot of younger people are addicted to
Totally.
social media. So they get that dopamine hit and you can recognize that in the very beginning and work backwards from it, which is incredibly powerful. So your content framework is just you stack the shit out of it, prepare it, and then just have it all set up. Is that how you think about it?
For sure. It's a process. I'm just a disciplined kind of person. I don't know if it's I've really always been this way. I've just, maybe it's like an OCD thing. I've always been pretty habitual. I wake up at the same time every day. I basically eat the same stuff at the same time every day.
Same, man.
Like
I
yeah,
never ever change my meals, man. I'm also like a big guy that's into like fitness and training and everything. So I've
yeah.
never deviated from that.
Me neither. No, me neither. I mean, I'll go out to dinner sometimes, and I really, really enjoy that. But even still, that's like a rare treat for me.
I eat
Um,
the same shit at dinner.
yeah, and even when I go out to dinner, if they have my meal, then I get the meal. Um, but and so I added that morning routine into what I'm already doing. And it's just so powerful. Like Twitter and LinkedIn especially, they've been so powerful in terms of growing my personal brand, in terms of growing timstodds.com. And it's never something I thought I would have. It's never something that I was interested in having. Even a lot of my friends and the people that work for me, they always call me Batman, because I've been obsessed with Batman for a kid, but since I was a kid, but also because I kind of lurk in the shadows, like all of my companies was never me facing. It was always just like I'll do the work and then I'll close the deals, but I don't need to put myself out there. And so the last 3 years, I just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do this. It's always like a secret little dream that I've had, but I never quite allowed myself to admit the fact that like, yeah, maybe this attention and maybe growing like a personal brand is cool and feels good. And once I went for it, it's just exploded. It really has, and I love it. Like honestly, it's changed my perspective on social media to the extent that I see how valuable it can be. But even still, I use social media to grow my email list. I do not build a business on social media. If social media went away tomorrow, I'd still be fine. I use it, it doesn't use me.
And that's it, man, because there's two sides to every transaction. And for every consumer, there's the creator. So you are just purely the creator, which is
Yeah.
great to recognize, and that's kind of what I try to do. But of course, like, there's a level of engagement that I'm trying to get back to and respond to comments, and if it's on the business side, if there's leads from the business and everything. So I think I've learned a lot from you, man, even in this period of time. Was I needed the kick. And it's funny because when I speak to other people, I tell them to build email lists as well, because I had one for my podcast, and I do have it for just the pod itself. Um, but I guess it's a different relationship, because I'm not asking people for my podcast for anything. I just create these episodes because they're helpful for other people,
Yeah, me
So
too.
the business aspect was kind of what I was more interested in trying to start in terms of the business email list. Because for the podcast, man, just like yourself, I'm just trying to share this knowledge with people, learn myself in the process, and many young guys are trying to move ahead with this stuff. You mentioned about your consistency, so I know you've got into Muay Thai, and it seems strange for yourself. Are you a tall guy?
Yeah, I'm
Tall guy.
6'2". I'm pretty tall.
How does that work for Muay Thai? And is it much more challenging when you're sparring? Like, how does that come about? How do you find it?
No, it's an advantage for sure. I wish I got into Muay Thai when I was so much younger. I wrestled in high school, and my
Nice.
dad was like a really good wrestler, and I've always appreciated martial arts. Maybe that's where I get like the discipline thing from. It's always been a big part of my life. But well, geez, almost 5 years ago at this point, I had back surgery. One of the discs in my spine completely blew out, and I've always been a runner. So I like lifting, I like fitness, but there's something about cardio that just mentally I loved, because it was an ego thing. I had this idea in my head that like people got bigger muscles than me, but everybody's going to quit before me. And so I just
Six.
loved this idea of endurance, and I still do. And when I couldn't run anymore after my back surgery, and like I still really can't run, I think that's how I herniated the disc. Actually, it was just all the miles on the road. Um, I needed something. I needed something, and so I bought a rowing machine, and I hit the rower pretty intense these days. But even still, nothing like Muay Thai just scratched that itch for me in a way that I'm just obsessed with now. It's so fun. Um, it taught me how to use my body in a way that like I never even knew, because I was so into sports, and all of my life in fitness. It's gonna be hard to explain on a podcast, but it was all very straight lined. Like when you run, your hips are coming up in front of you, and when you
Yeah,
learn how
man.
to throw kicks and punches, you learn this like rotation, which I never even knew I had. And so my back isn't tight anymore. Like my hips opened up in a way that like I never even knew I could do it. And just like the spiritual stuff that you get from, no matter how good you get at Muay Thai, like you always suck at it. It's just, like no matter how good you get, you still suck. And so that whole process, um, man. So I'm on a tangent here. I start talking about fighting, and I just get super hyped. But to
No,
answer
man,
your
I
question,
love this
no,
shit. I love this
yeah,
shit.
being long has been. You have to learn how to fight long. Like
Hmm.
everybody has advantages and disadvantages, and so like I train really specifically how to fight long. But no, it's been great. It's been great for
I
me.
love that, man. I read in one of your blogs as well. You said that your dad was kind of congratulating you for like your level of consistency, and
Yeah.
that was like the biggest thing that you know has got you to come back to training for so many years. How much does that benefit your business and life, you think, or and especially coming out of recovery as well, possibly?
Yeah, it's like my superpower. Um, it just really is. My wife even said something the other day in passing, and it was I'm not going to get the quote totally, um, but there's an agency that is like starting to compete with us a little bit, and you know how it goes when you're a young gun. You like start talking shit on the people that you're trying to steal business from, and so I heard through the grapevine that these people were kind of talking shit on us, and I've never been that guy. I don't talk shit on competitors. I think it's like a bad look. I think it comes across kind of desperate, but I also think it's not effective. It's not like an actual good way to grow. And so I heard this, and I was talking to Jules about it, kind of laughing, but also kind of secretly like full of rage. And she said something along the lines of like, yeah, Tim, but 10 years from now, like it's not going to matter. And what she was really saying inherently is that these people that I'm competing with, they're not playing the same game as me. They're not playing the I will do this every day for 10 years game. They're playing the let me try to grab like as many clients as I can right now and try to make a wave. And so my mindset, my mentality is always beneficial, because it's just the best you could do is time me. It's just it's the closest you could come to actually getting ahead of me in the long term, because I'll just do it every day for 10 years. And it's not even an ego thing. It's just who I am. It's like in my nature. And so when she said that, it also made me feel really good and really proud about this ability I have to just continuously show up without expecting instant gratification.
And that's the best possible way you could be, man. You're always enjoying the process, like, and I'm not saying it's even cliche to say, but like you genuinely are, because you
Yeah.
started your agency in 2011, man, and you've gone on to 100 other things. And I know we're pretty much out of time now at this stage, but we could, like, there's 1,000 of other things you've done that I'd love to get into another time, and
Yeah,
possibly
happy
even in
to.
person, man. Possibly in
Yeah, I
person,
would love that for sure.
But
One of the coolest things about my podcast is some of the friends that I've made. I don't do interview style podcasts anymore, but when I had my personal podcast, some of like my closest friends till this day, people that I've met in person, but even people that I've just built relationships online, have all come from the conversations I've had through my podcast years ago. So I'd be happy to. Anything you need, yeah, whatever.
of course, man. And man, I'm the exact same. Like, the reason why that is, I think, because I think about this stuff really, really deeply, is because, like, you're obviously a good bit older than me, but the path that you're on is something that I would probably aspire to in my own particular way. And we would have a lot of similarities in some aspects. Of course, we're wildly different in other aspects. But it's like, that's why you become friends with these people, because in some way there's that overlap. And that's what's
Sure.
actually so sick about it. And a lot of my best mates were my internet mates initially, now over the last couple of years. And some of them I've, of course, met in person. Some of them I keep in contact with now since I'm in Asia. But that's cool, though, in itself, isn't it?
It is. It's very cool. I've made great friends, way more than I expected to. You know, like you mentioned Dakota, I wouldn't call him a great friend, but like I have his cell phone number now, and every once in a while I get an
Same.
idea and I'll
Will
text
do.
him, and it's great. It's a blast. My friend Dango that I mentioned, he's become like a real friend. And yeah, if you and I end up in that same place, I'd be really grateful for the relationship as well.
I appreciate it, man. And anything I could ever do for you, man, always, always there, genuinely. In any aspect, of course, anything I could ever help with you.